It is getting to the time of year when aspiring medics are starting to take their application for med school a bit more seriously, and with that comes the dreaded UCAT. If you're new here, hi, my name is Uwa. I'm a third year medical student, and if you're not new here, thank you so much for coming back to another video. Before we get on with this video, I just want to say thank you to Medify for reaching out and wanting to work with me again. I absolutely loved Medify when I was preparing for UCAT 3 years ago. Was it 3 years ago? Oh my god, no, I sat my UCAT in 2019. I sat it nearly 4 years ago. Wow, time flies. What actually is the UCAT? It is an aptitude test used by the majority of medical schools to help basically filter out their applicants. All universities use the UCAT differently. You can find more information on each med school website. In particular, more detail will be given in the section about their entry requirements. Let's get into the nitty-gritties of the video. These are things that you should know when preparing for your UCAT. So first of all, something I always say and I will continue to reiterate is that the UCAT is a game of practice. It is something that you will get better at and you will improve your score through sufficient and lots of practice. It's not a test you can revise for, and it's not something you can gain knowledge for. It is a really weird test. It examines stuff like your decision making, your thinking under pressure, your ethical judgment. It does test stuff like mathematics and your comprehension skills, but it's not at the level you get tested at A level. It's more how do you work well in these situations under pressure. That is something that you will get better at through practice, through exposure to lots of different questions, and in particular UCAT question types, which Medify provides you with. Medify has a question bank with over 20,000 questions, and with that many questions you can never run out of practice. You're literally going to be having questions pouring out your ears. There are different ways that you can practice the questions. They have customizable quizzes. You can choose the number of questions that you do. You can choose which section or sections of the UCAT questions you can focus on, which is quite good because then you can focus a lot on the sections that you find quite challenging and the sections that you struggle with. Also, a particularly difficult thing about the UCAT is the timing. If you were given an infinite amount of time, you would be able to get a really high score in the UCAT and do really well, but unfortunately you're only given 2 hours, and that includes reading time before each section starts. So 2 hours for this test just isn't enough. But with Medify you are able to work with that UCAT timing. The next thing you should know about UCAT preparation, and probably one of the most important and useful things in my opinion and from my humble experience, is that you should practice with a resource that emulates the UCAT interface, which Medify does. So the UCAT is an online test and you should practice it online. You can get UCAT question books which give you an idea of UCAT questions, but this isn't the same experience you're going to have on the day. Better you start early and you just get into the habit and get comfortable with using the UCAT software or something very similar to UCAT software, i.e. Medify. So the third thing, how have I just started? I've already lost count. I'm pretty sure I'm on the third piece of advice, but this is just basically the perks of Medify and why you will benefit from practicing with them. So as well as giving you the practice questions, they give you advice and tutorials. They teach you how to master, how to ace the UCAT. They've got about 50 hours of detailed tutorials and over 180 text tutorials. So I always found the video tutorials at the time I was using the UCAT to be really useful, and they just break down everything about each section so well. I can guarantee you have not done anything like the UCAT before. So having these tutorials and being taught the UCAT before you then start your practices is an absolute bonus, and it's so good to have. Another tip is you should get familiar with and know how to use the UCAT shortcuts. Like I said, the UCAT is a very time pressured exam, so you can save time by finding a quicker way to get the calculator up, finding a quick way to flag questions and stuff like that. I've not actually gone into much detail about what each section is, so I'm just going to go into a bit of information now and also give you some tips for each section. So the 5 sections are quantitative reasoning, decision making, verbal reasoning, abstract reasoning, and situational judgment, shortened to SJT. So starting off with quantitative reasoning, this is basically testing your mathematical ability. So the common topics that are tested are algebra, statistics, number, and geometry. By number I mean addition, multiplication, subtraction, and division. I couldn't even think what I meant then. So the 3 top tips I will give for this section are to firstly brush up on your mental maths. So you have got the calculator there, but you are going to waste time getting it up for everything. Stuff like your multiplication, 9 times 12, what's that, 108, I think. I've not done mental maths in quite a while. You do have access to a scratch pad or to a whiteboard for working out, but I would say do less working out and do more estimating and rounding. And I know I've just slated the online calculator and said brush up your mental maths, but the online calculator can actually be really useful. So I recommend that you do get familiar with using the online calculator, learn the shortcuts on it, learn the important functions and different buttons you can use, because again, this is just going to save you time. Anything you do when it comes to the UCAT, think how could I save time to maximise my score and just reduce your stress. So the next section is decision making, and this tests your ability basically to apply logic and reach a decision or conclusion. Sometimes you have to evaluate arguments. There's loads of different question types, and Medify does provide examples of each one within their practices. I'm just going to jump straight to the tips, the purpose of this video. So first of all, when you're evaluating arguments or statements, you want to avoid generalization. So by this, I mean the question might be like, all girls with brown hair love ice cream. One of the answer options might be, boys with brown hair love ice cream. The question said, all girls with brown hair. The answer is saying all boys with brown hair. By picking that as the correct answer, you're making a massive generalization. Another thing when you're evaluating arguments is to avoid statements that are very opinionated. In most cases, you should go for the most the most objective and the most factual answer option given. Avoid anything with bias. The best way to do this is to take a step back and look at it as a third person. Forget any opinions, any preconceptions, anything you have towards the statement or the argument given. Just pick the most objective, factual and least biased answer option there. Most times the factual things will be supported by figures and statistics. Another really useful tip I made the most of when preparing for the decision making section was to revise basic probability. This is stuff like being able to recognize and apply the and or the or rule, and meaning multiplication and or meaning addition. So now moving on to our next section, abstract reasoning. This tests your ability, so I've got this all written down. It tests your ability to identify ongoing patterns and trends across a random variety of shapes. So there are 4 question types, all of which examples are shown on Medify. So moving on to the tips. For one of the question types, the set A or B type questions, I recommend that you apply the 3-box method rule. This is when you look at 3 boxes and you identify the same pattern or trend in those boxes, and 98% of the time that will apply to the other 3 boxes. So you can use that as your rule and pick the correct answer from the options given. Often as well in those question types, the pattern for set A is opposite to set B. But once you've figured out set A, just apply the opposite for set B. As you're preparing with Medify, create a list of patterns, because although there are loads of patterns, there's only a finite number that can possibly be tested, and a lot of them are repeated. Like you might notice dominoes, times, particular colours, numbers, stuff like that. Create a pattern list, and during your 1-minute reading time before this section starts, write down all the patterns that you can remember from that list. So the next section, and it's the final of like the problem solving type questions, I really did not enjoy the section, but that's because I've never been a big reader. My first piece of advice for this is to read the question first. You're going to save time by reading the question first, even read the answer options, and then scan through the text for the keywords and data you're looking for. So good things to look out for are numbers, names, capital letters, things like that that match up to what the question is asking for. And then once you've found that bit of information, read the sentence above and below. There's no point reading through the whole text as you haven't got time for that. But one of the question types are true-false questions, where you're given a statement and you're asked whether it's true or false, or you can't tell. If it's true, it's stated in the text. If it's false, the complete opposite is in the text. And if you can't tell, then it's not in the text at all. These are easy marks. Read the question and look for relevant bit of information in the text. Is it there? Is it not there? Or is the opposite there? Final tip for this section is aim to answer every single question, even if it's just a guess. You've got a 1 in 4 chance, for example, of getting it right if you guess. If you don't guess, 0% chance, no marks, lower score. The final section is the situational judgment test. This basically tests the essential qualities needed to be a doctor, such as integrity, professionalism, I should know this. Teamwork, moral reasoning and empathy. This is scored slightly different to the other sections of the UCAT. Whereas you're given a number score, you're given a band for this one. Useful bits of information I'd suggest is to know your ethical pillars of medicine. There are 4: beneficence, autonomy, non-maleficence and justice. Next piece of advice is to be familiar with the hospital hierarchy. It's more important when it comes to escalator problem and reporting problems. So if you have a little triangle, at the top of the triangle are your consultants, followed by your doctors, junior doctors, and then us, your medical students. And then 4 final things you should know for UCAT preparation. So first of all, I'd recommend that you practice over a 6 to 8 week period. This is because you don't want to burn yourself out, you don't want to be fatigued. Also, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, the UCAT is a really hard test and preparing for it can be boring, it can be frustrating because of how difficult it is. So I think 6 to 8 weeks is enough time to get familiar with the exam structure. I practiced over about 8 weeks. I bought the 2-month subscription and honestly it was so worth the money. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, in the final run up to my exam, I started using the Medify mocks. These are one-shot mocks. They have about, I think, 41 mini mocks and they've also got loads of full mocks. I do recommend 6 to 8 weeks, but Medify do offer longer subscriptions. I will put all of them on the screen and the different pricings for those different subscriptions. Another thing is to be kind to yourself. Give yourself regular breaks. Do something during the day, it's going to take your mind off UCAT, then come back in the evening and feel refreshed and ready to bash out some more questions on Medify. Medify is really good because they also give you feedback on all of your questions. So read that feedback and act on it. 2 ways you're going to get better at UCAT is, first of all, relentless practice, sufficient practice with the right resource. And secondly, practicing question types you keep getting wrong, but most importantly about the ones you keep getting wrong is to read the feedback, take that on board and apply it to your next practice. Finally, as cheesy as this sounds, it is something you really should know when practicing for the UCAT, and that is not to give up and don't let it get to you. So it is a really difficult test. I say this in every video. The UCAT is probably one of the most difficult tests that I've ever done, probably because of the way it is. It's an aptitude test. It's not testing my knowledge, it's testing my ability to do X, Y, and Z. Do what you can to make sure that you are getting as much practice as possible and you are giving yourself the best chance to get the best score possible. Don't give up at all your practice, as frustrating as it may be at times. Just remind yourself that this is just another hurdle you need to jump over to get one step closer to getting into med school. At the end, speaking from experience, all your hard work will be worth it and it's all going to pay off. I'm going to end this video here, one, because I've gone through all the tips, all the advice I have on things you should know before you start your practices, but also because it's 12 o'clock and I'm starving. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, and the only thing that's left to do now is to head over to Medify and you can purchase your subscription to get started on your UCAT practices. Good luck with your preparations. If you want more info on Medify, feel free to check out the other videos I have done with them in the past. Thank you so much to Medify for working with me on another video. I'll be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok as I have more Medify content coming out on there. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like and subscribe to see more from me. Thank you so much for watching the video. I will see you in my next one.